Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsors today are Notion, OnePassword and Oracle. Three very different firms that I want to be sure you know about, so more on them later. And I'm joined this week by Apple Insider's Malcolm Owen. Malcolm, how are things in Wales?
Oh, it's typical Welsh summer at the moment, which means that it is bucketing it down the windows.
Okay, it's actually dry here. I don't think location is terribly important and not a headline for a podcast, but in this case it might be mildly relevant because since you're in Wales, Malcolm, and I'm in England, up to now, I'm pretty sure that you and I were the only two Apple Insider people who hadn't even got to try the Apple Vision Pro. As of last weekend, though, I've had a go. Malcolm, I'm aware that I'm actually close to quite a couple of Apple stores, much closer than you are. Have you had an Apple Vision Pro demo yet?
No. And it's quite simple, really. I mean, Wales has a grand total of one Apple store. And the one time I've tried to visit it on purpose, it was closed and I had to go to Bristol. So, yeah, no.
Oh, you don't want to be going to Bristol. Grief. No. Okay. Bristol's a fine... It's a confusing thing with two train stations, but otherwise a fine part of the world. Nice BBC office there where they turn me down for a job. This is getting off the thing. Do you want an Apple Vision Pro? I'm not offering to get you one, but are you interested?
I mean, if I didn't have to pay a kidney for it, then yes. I mean, I am one of these people who works with multiple monitors. I'm assuming that you've got two monitors or at least one massive monitor that you work with, right?
It's a very wide one. My morning exercise is walking from one end to the other.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So
but just
you and I both know the benefits of multiple screens and all that stuff. I would love that, but without having to pay for multiple screens. So for me, the Apple Vision Pro is basically multiple screens hovering in midair and I can work from them. But basically that one key scene where that guy who broke his leg in the most recent Underdogs ad, where he is the centre of all possible, we can make this work. Mom, get the coffee! And he dons the Apple Vision Pro and does productivity. I would dream of that. Except that it's way too expensive. So
right. Okay, well, cheaper than flying to Thailand, but I think I'd rather be in Thailand than with a broken leg.
Well, I don't know. You could be surprised by how cheap it is to fly to places nowadays.
Okay. I should say I have been pestering Wes Hilliard, the usual guest host on this, for 5 months now, for every scintilla of information about the Apple Vision Pro, because he got one on day one, got it in Nashville, had a great time with it, wears it every day. And now I think in some ways he actually spoilt me, because I went to the demo and it's not like I could tell the Apple people how to do the demonstration. Of course it was, but it felt a little bit like, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, Wes has said that. I know that bit. Oh, actually, basketball in my face. Wasn't expecting that bit. And I did enjoy the fact that when the dinosaurs came up, I was able to point to the Apple guy and say, eat him instead. I quite enjoyed that. I think, though, Apple Vision Pro, it's everything Wes says. It's incredible. And I don't want one. I can't quite work that out, apart from the price is genuinely a major factor. Though actually, no, hang on. £3,500 minimum for Apple Vision Pro. They did try to upsell me, gently and politely, but they tried. Isn't that more expensive than having three monitors?
Well, not really. I mean,
around. Isn't it a choice of where you spend all your money?
Yeah, it is going to be a bit tough. I mean, if you were to buy three very high-end monitors that cost over £1,000 each, then, yeah, it's on an even footing. But most monitors are a lot cheaper. I mean, you can go into Currys or your local regional electronics supergiant store of choice and get three massive TVs for the same cost as an Apple Vision Pro and use them as monitors. I know people say don't use TVs as monitors, but each to their own. But quite frankly, it's fine. It's always going to be cheaper to get three monitors of a reasonable size, of a reasonably high resolution, even if you go baller with it. But I can't really say it is a similar price, really, for most people. You're not going to say 3 monitors is the same price as an Apple Vision Pro because fundamentally they're not.
Right. I'd like to explain that Currys is probably the UK's equivalent of Best Buy, but I realise I've never been in a Best Buy store. So is that a fair comparison? Imagine a large electronics store without the very best reputation. Would that cover Best Buy, do you think? Maybe not. I might be being scurrilous there, but now you know what Currys is like.
I mean, you do realise that we did actually have Best Buy in the UK at one point.
We did not, did we? And I missed it. What happened?
I know.
How?
Money and realisation.
Mine or theirs? Okay.
A little bit of column A and column B there, though.
Okay.
So,
I love the fact that we've now got Tim Horton appearing in Britain. There's actually 3 of them within my kind of local area and stuff. And so that's a Canadian store that failed to break it into America and is trying again overseas. And suddenly it's everywhere, and you're just looking at me strangely now.
No. This is a weird obsession of mine. I've realised that where I live, Swansea, there's an oddly high number of American stores that are opening in Swansea. So Wales has, of all things, it has a Tim Hortons, which is nice. It also has a Taco Bell.
Okay.
But it also has a Denny's.
Right.
And I'm still amazed that Denny's is open. In part because the food.
Yeah.
No, seriously, this is fantastic. The food safety ratings go from 1 to 5 in the UK, where they have inspectors come in and check and give them a rating every so often. I never knew the rating went down to 0 before until Denny's opened. When they opened to US standards of cleanliness, not UK. And so they made so many mistakes and had so many issues, they actually had a 0 on opening. Now they've improved. They've got a lot better. It's now safe to eat in there. But yeah. I didn't know the scale went down to 0 in that way.
Okay, I mean, you've got to stop me turning this into the Fast Food Insider podcast, but I've got to ask, because I want to say these words. Do you have a Piggly Wiggly near you?
How dare you?
I've not one thin clue what they sell in Piggly Wiggly, but I just hear the name mentioned as some kind of fast food thing, and I want to try it someday. Let's move away from this and on to other things that I would like to try, because actually one of the reasons for asking you to step in this week while Wes is off on one of these holiday things is just by coincidence, you and I have both covered a very similar thing on Apple Insider in about the last, I think, month or so. We've both written about the Apple Ring. I've just written a piece saying, well, trying to get inside the head of Apple, really, and what must they do with it? What's the kind of Apple thing they would do? Where could they go? I mean, freely acknowledging the fact that I'm not Apple and they are vastly better at this stuff than I am, but what does it look like they could have to go with this time? Whereas you did the much more factual thing, if you can call rumours factual, you gave us a summary of the last 20 years of rumours about the Apple Ring. I mean, you know everything. Are we hours away from an Apple Ring, do you think?
Probably not. Would you like me to expand on my answer there?
Yeah, tiny bit. That would be good. I mean, you're the man in the know.
Otherwise, it'll be a very, very quiet podcast.
Okay.
Yeah,
But we've all got things to do. Short. Okay.
I'm not. No one knows. Seriously, no one knows. No one really knows if Apple is making a smart ring. No one. No, it's all.
There are quite a few patents that say Apple's at least knocking it around a bit, shall we say, in quite some drawn detail.
Yes, Apple has certainly considered it.
Yes.
Yeah, Apple's considered it, certainly. It's just a problem of translating that into something they can produce and then actually sell. We know that people are well, when I say rumours, I mean analysts are forecasting. Oh, it'll be out within X number of years. But that means nothing, really. No one's got any scoop saying, oh, so-and-so manufacturer's been contacted about this. No, there's none of that. It is literally just analysts going, yeah, it could be out in a couple of years. And there's evidence in the form of patents and patent applications that Apple has basically looked at this concept in many different ways. But at the same time, there's no guarantee that any one patent will ever appear in an Apple product or service. Never a guarantee of that at all. They're good. They're nice. They're evidence. But again, no guarantees.
Oh, okay. I got quite excited about this a bit. I don't know why. Actually, that's another reason I wanted to ask you. Let's go the other route with this then. Based on all you know and all that is said about it, let's put it that way then, does a smart ring appeal to you?
I can understand the point of it. I can understand the whole thing of I don't particularly need to have an Apple Watch on my wrist dinging every 10 minutes whenever a notification comes through, because you're not going to get that with a ring. A ring is such a tiny amount of electronics to work with that you have to be very careful with what you put into it in terms of products. You have to be very careful in terms of what features you put into it, just because there's not enough space. And so that's going to limit what you can do with it. And I could easily imagine that you could put in maybe the enough electronics to be able to do pulse detection, and maybe a little bit more to do like a gyroscope or an accelerometer, so you can do basic fitness tracking with that without blowing the size up too big.
Actually, size is an issue, isn't it? I remember thinking when the watch came out that it was quite peculiar for Apple. They do their good, better, best things that sometimes include sizes, but with the watch there were two sizes of casing. There were all these different sizes, so many different sizes of straps and things. You couldn't just go online and say I want that one. You had to go through some selection process for it. And now with Apple Vision Pro, you've got to go through the vision testing thing for it. A ring, it's not like you can take a ring to a jeweler and say, can you make this a bit bigger, without smashing all of the electronics.
It would be very impressive if Apple could do that. But, I mean, even if you look at what Samsung has done with the Galaxy Ring, they made a pretty good-looking ring. And it is used for sleep tracking and fitness tracking, and that's it. You can't really do much with the ring in that form factor. You can't add controls to a ring because that's going to add bulk to it in some way. Even in the patents, you've seen where there's a ring stacked on another ring, so you can rotate the outer ring like a bezel for control of something. But you then don't have a screen or indicators to be able to show what you're controlling, so you have to have that on a different device entirely. So it could theoretically be a controller, but at the same time, it seems like a lot of bulk for not much benefit. There's also been patents where the ring extends outwards on the finger and has a sheath, so it can actually detect when you're bending your finger, which could be handy for applications like if you're using the Apple Vision Pro and you want to have an actual controller set up that's made up of rings or on a glove or whatever, instead of having to rely on hoping it actually sees you pinch your fingers. I can understand it from that point of view as well, but even that control is way too much for a normal consumer smart ring. I don't think Apple will be able to do that much, really, beyond what Samsung has brought out to the table with its own Galaxy Ring, except maybe deeply integrate it with Apple's ecosystem of features a lot more.
A couple of years ago, I actually reviewed a smart ring called Wave for Work, and I then used it after the review. I was presenting something somewhere, and I was actually using it to change the slides on Keynote, and it was excellent because previously you use a remote and that didn't always look great. So you couldn't use your watch because it looked like you were just bored rather than changing anything. And if you got out your phone to change it, you were texting and things. So being able to just kind of go, yeah, whatever, move on, and secretly press a button on the ring, that was good. But it is, I mean, I liked it, and I think they did what they did well, but it's quite a bulky thing, certainly compared to Samsung's new one. And it wasn't truly a ring. It was like a block of plastic with some buttons on and a very, very small LCD screen that could display a letter at a time, like on, off, and all that stuff. And then it kind of wrapped around your finger with some ribbon and things. So it felt like a tiny, tiny Apple Watch with a band around it. But that's what convinced me that maybe there could be some benefit in the watch. Oh, but also, actually, speaking of the watch, I have hope that an Apple Ring will get rid of the big lie about an Apple Watch, which I believe is this. Right from the start, we were told how brilliant it is that if a text message comes in, you can just turn your wrist, look at the screen, see what it is. know whether you have to deal with it. And that is true. That is convenient. That's very fast. It's much quicker than, right, stopping work, getting out the phone, looking at the screen, all that. Much, much better. But the one thing it is not is unobtrusive. So if you're on a date somewhere and a text message comes in, the next words you will hear will be, am I boring you at all? And things. Whereas a ring, if you could set it to just tap me for texts from these people or this service, you would at least know something important has come or it hasn't, and you can deal with it when you could. That's, I think, the promise of a smart ring.
At least with a smart ring doing that, with a slight vibration or something like that, that is unobtrusive to everyone. I've been told, could you turn those notifications off, please? It's really annoying our dinner. I've been told that because of the Apple Watch just pinging repeatedly, because I'm in a group chat and everyone else is sending messages and I'm not.
Oh, that's so interesting. At some point, and I don't know when, I silenced all sounds on my watch. I like it when you speak to the watch and it speaks back, but because I was having so many pings, control center, hit the quieter button, whatever that's called, and I've had none of that since. I get all the taps, I get none of the bleeps and things. So yeah, you could do that. You could still be in the know, in the loop, without disturbing, I don't know, the crowds of people at a football match or wherever you spend your time when you're away from screens. If you're ever away from screens, I wonder about us all sometimes. Does that not solve your problem right there? Are you not thinking this is a great podcast to come on, get things sorted? No. This episode is brought to you by Notion. Notion actually does this quite a lot. Notion's a regular sponsor of Apple Insider. And what I can do every time is actually ask the Notion app itself, what features of Notion have I gone on about before? What have I enthused about before? And what the Notion app can very quickly tell me is that I keep banging on about how Notion is one single place for everything, how it is so rich in features that everyone's Notion is radically different to everyone else's. And it can tell me how I don't seem to be able to even breathe out about Notion without rushing to make sure you know specifically about Notion AI and how this app helps us do the work we need to do instead of also all of the chores around managing that work. Now, I find I tend to think of Notion as a tool for individuals, but that's just because that's how I've used it. And really, I'm both right and wrong, because Notion is yours and you ultimately end up customizing it quite incredibly, but it is at the same time a tool that can just as easily be shared by whole teams. I mean, they share it, but every member has Notion set up the way they like it. It's just you've all got documents in common. You can all share resources. When you've all got together and had a meeting, you can let Notion be what summarizes that meeting and what shows each of you the action points you've let yourself in for. That, I think, is putting AI to genuinely intelligent use. I mean, you can summarize meetings. It's not like you haven't done it before, but that isn't a job that really needs your skills. And as important as it is, summarizing a meeting, it's kind of wasting your talent. You can argue it's wasting your time. I'm not knocking how important they are. It's just you are needed more on the work that you've got to do. And I think you want to do this other work. And Notion AI can take away things like this. Notion AI can cut down on everything else to free you up to do the work that you're there for, really, that it's most important to you. Don't just listen to me about this, though. Try it for yourself. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. One thing, that's all lowercase letters, notion.com/AppleInsider. Go to there and start turning ideas into action. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider. And thank you to Notion for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. This episode is brought to you by OnePassword. I love OnePassword. I can actually still picture the moment when my wife showed it to me on her iPhone, and I actually wondered, why would anybody want a password manager, let alone why would anyone put it on the front screen of their iPhone? And within under 10 minutes, call it 5 or 6 minutes, I had OnePassword on my iPhone's front page, and it has not budged in the years since. Only I'm conscious that I at least used to think of OnePassword as a personal password manager. I mean, on account of that's what I've used it for. But it is much more. It has a much broader use than just me keeping my Apple ID safe. And I've been shown that repeatedly and recently. Just like last week, for example, a charity I work for, they set me up with their company-wide OnePassword account. And they're the second charity to do that this year. Totally separately, a large organisation I write for has OnePassword as well. It has shared OnePassword across all of its teams, and certain accounts and certain passwords are available to those team members who require them, but not to anyone else. And even then, that isn't how far and how wide OnePassword goes. This episode of the AppleInsider Podcast is actually specifically brought to you by what's called the OnePassword Extended Access Management feature. It's for firms whose teams use unmanaged devices, for firms that employ contractors a lot, and actually also for where there are workers on site who use shadow IT apps that, yes, help them get their work done, but they're not controlled, they may not even be reported, and therefore are certainly a security risk. OnePassword Extended Access Management is a security solution to all of this. It ensures that every user credential is strong and protected, every device is known and is healthy, and every app is visible. OnePassword Extended Access Management solves the problems that traditional IAM and MDM can't touch. It's security for the way we work today, really, and it's available now to companies with Okta, and it's coming later this year to Google Workspace and Microsoft Entra. Check it out at onepassword.com/product/XAM. So that's OnePassword, the digit 1, onepassword.com/product/XAM. And thanks to OnePassword for supporting the Apple Insider Podcast. I'll tell you what, I got quite serious there, quite economic about smart rings versus Apple. Let's go away from all of that. And it's something that actually initially I thought was quite silly. It's just the further we got into it, the more I got quite disturbed and even a bit twitchy, because earlier this week, writing on Apple Insider, you had, I think you had quite a good time actually with Microsoft's Copilot and managing to use it to basically smash all copyright laws in the world ever. So, Malcolm, how did this happen? Are you in prison? What does it mean for us? What has Microsoft Copilot done to you this week?
Okay, well, for start, it's actually quite difficult to aim this microphone through the prison bars, but not really. I'm not in prison. Don't worry about that. One of the things that came up this week, we needed an image for an article about cookies. Are we going to get to that later?
It depends, if they let you out for good behaviour, yeah. But back to the point, yeah.
Anyway, back to the point. We needed an image for an article, and we don't usually generate AI images for them. We source them, we may do some image editing of our own, but we don't actually rely on AI to generate them. And just to try it, one of the editorial team decided to go into Microsoft's Copilot and ask for an image of Cookie Monster eating a cookie that is decorated with Google Chrome logo.
Okay.
And weirdly, it created the image. And we're talking the full-blown Sesame Street, cookie, nom, 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 eating an iced cookie which was iced with the Chrome logo. It was actually pretty good. But it raised the problem of, well, this seems like quite a bad idea on Copilot's part. One of the problems that we have, especially one of the early problems we had with generative AI was deep fakes. When people would generate a model that would make someone's image as if they're doing something that they're not. For example, presidents saying horrible things to the populace, or especially adult entertainment came up as a problem as well. When people were making images or videos of people who were obviously not the people taking part, but had different faces on. And
Yeah,
this
I
led
think
to
we've got the idea there. So
yeah.
this is a
I'm
family
being
show.
as careful.
Okay.
I am being as careful as possible with my phrasing. Believe me. But the whole problem with that was the possible legalities of people being sued and everything for misrepresenting identity. And the problem is the same can be said for trademarks and copyrights and
Sure.
for characters and TV shows and actors and actresses. It's all one big problem. But with generative AI systems like Copilot, Adobe's Firefly, and all that, these models are trained on everything and can easily make an image of anything where anything is doing anything to something else, and so on and so forth. Extrapolate what you want from that. The problem is, if you have a system like that, it then becomes very easy to make an image that a person or a company can object to and then land you in a legal water.
Actually, it's more than can object to. I can't remember what they were, but there's some sweets that have Disney characters on, tiny little things, little mints or something. And because there's a picture of Mickey Mouse or something, if you look very closely, underneath Mickey Mouse, there is copyright Disney Corporation or something.
Yeah.
And other end of the scale, you often have stories. I mean, this isn't a thing in Britain, but in the States, you have lemonade stands, Girl Guides selling cookie boxes and things, and that have Disney characters on them. I mean, not very well drawn, but recognisably Disney characters. And here's the massive Disney Corporation, a horrible, evil empire, setting teams of lawyers onto these little girls and boys. The trouble is, they kind of have to, because if they don't, if they allow their trademarks to be used by other people, then there's precedent. Other companies could come along later and say, well, you didn't sue here, we therefore you can lose control of your own assets or something. So it's close to automatic. You rip somebody off like Disney or Apple or something, you will be contacted by the lawyers and things by requirement. So it's scary. This is where I start to get worried about us, whether the representatives of the Cookie Monster would be on the phone.
And this is where the problem begins. Because you've got a system where you can easily make these things, the companies who own the copyright, the trademark, whatever, who are they going to sue? Are they going to sue the person who made the prompt, or are they going to sue the person who made the model? And obviously the people who made the model have a lot more money available than the person who made the prompt, certainly.
Yeah, frankly, I think sue everybody is more likely than anything. But yes, to actually get anything out of anybody, you're saying Microsoft could be in a bit of bother here.
Yes. The key problem here is that where Microsoft is more easily allowing people to generate things that involve other companies' marks and IP and so on and so forth, others don't. So a key example being Adobe Firefly. If you were to try and do a prompt to generate an image of an iPhone held in a hand, you don't actually get to see an iPhone, but you do see a message saying, one or more words may not meet user guidelines and were removed. And if you look into the user guidelines, it basically says don't do anything that will upset third parties because you are ripping off their intellectual property, blah, 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 blah. All very useful language. So they're basically saying, hey, you could try, but we're going to stop you. And then on Microsoft's side, you would expect there to be similar sort of guide rails so that you're not going to have objectionable pictures of Donald and Goofy and let your imagination run riot with that. But there's no protections in place for that, really. At least from the usage of third-party IP. So we found it very easy to create an image without really tricking the system for said Cookie Monster eating a Chrome cookie. We found it very easy to also create images of Mickey Mouse eating the Apple logo.
Okay, right.
Now, this is not really great. And it's not just logos and brand names and so on and so forth and characters. It can also be products. If you go into Copilot, it certainly knows what an iPhone looks like because we asked it to generate a picture of an iPhone, and it did. It generated a couple of other things like a weird ear pod attached to a pen, and the iPhone it generated was fairly older looking. It wasn't a real one, though. You could definitely tell it was made by AI. There were quite a few issues with it, but it also wasn't that bad. It was actually quite okay as an iPhone to look at. And then we also had it create an image of an iMac, and it made an older style iMac. You know, the thick, chunky ones that look like it was an inch thick. Made one of those, and it was pretty impressive. Except that it was also being used with a stylus, which is wrong.
Okay, right. I miss my old iMac, but never used it for that. No. Okay, so now, yes, where do we stand?
So now we got the problem of it's easy to do with Copilot, and others are not. So if you want to create images that lean upon third-party IP, you're going to be looking towards using Copilot for that, which is not a great position for Copilot to be in, considering the potential for lawyers to be lining up outside Microsoft's gate.
Isn't there a logic? I genuinely do think in a case like this, all parties involved would be sued simultaneously. But yes, of course, it's Microsoft with the pot of money behind it that would be the primary target. Isn't there a concomitant argument that Microsoft's lawyers can say, well, actually, it was you with your prompt that put us in this legal position. We're going to take you for everything you've ever dreamt of owning.
I mean, that's the logic for their lawyers. But, and it is a massive but, we haven't actually gone to court about this yet. Until we get a major legal case come through of someone going to court and saying, hey, this generator of images based on AI prompts and all that, they have done us wrong, and that's not been tested in court. Until it's actually tested in court and we have a definitive answer, we can't say whether one or the other is at fault, or both, or neither. We don't know.
Yeah, I think we can guess, though. Enough that I'm not going near Copilot with, what's the prompt? Rip-off Cookie Monster. Not going to be trying that in Copilot. But actually, okay, Occam's razor, simplest thing is usually the case. Is this just basically Microsoft got it wrong, and even now they go, oh, and are fixing it so that it will never happen?
Well, we don't know about the fixing bit, unfortunately. We know that they can always introduce more guide rails in the future. It's just that they've not implemented any at this point that affects these issues. They may do, or they may not. Again, Microsoft, it's free to make up its mind, but it's going to do that until, again, we go to court and settle it.
You would think that this is the kind of thing that would have come up during testing, but then what am I saying? This is Microsoft. Only a few weeks ago, didn't their head of AI say, if it's on the internet, you can have it? In which case, I'm just waiting for somebody to, I don't know, take his online bank account details, see how happy he is with that. But this is this feels like something surely somebody thought of in Microsoft and had it on a list to test. How could they then not have done this? Are all these AI things being rushed out too quickly? Is that what's really going on?
I think the promise of money from a whole new industry is certainly clouding people's judgment quite a bit.
Right. You think, it's not that you think better of businesses, you just expect that there'd be more checks and balances within a business, that they wouldn't rush. What am I thinking about? We're living in a world of Tesla. And so anyway, you actually said this about the cookies. We've talked about the Cookie Monster. We've talked about Google. We haven't actually explained the real truth here. And actually, maybe this is more of a story than I'm giving it credit for. Why were you trying to get a picture of a cookie being eaten?
Okay. The reason behind getting an image for a headline is... The reason behind getting the image for a story is Google has basically given up on its current project to try and make cookies not an issue anymore. We're referring to third-party cookies, which are used primarily for advertising purposes, for being able to track a user's movements online, to gather data, to be able to create a profile, to be able to target advertising at them even more better than before. even more better than before. Malcolm, words properly, please. Anyway, so 4 years ago, Google basically said, we will do something about it. We won't use third-party cookies anymore. We will stop using them. And years of delays later, they basically said, yeah, we're going to carry on using cookies. We'll think of something else.
Do we care?
So basically this week, they gave up. They have something called Privacy Sandbox, which is a bunch of APIs for Chrome and all that, which are meant to help make it so that people who are on the internet are categorized in different ways, but not individually identifiable. And it just became too much work for them, and they just couldn't do it. But they're promising to do other stuff in the future. They just haven't said what that is either.
Okay. So is this yet another case of Google announcing something and then shutting it down by, in this case, not shutting it down?
Basically.
Okay.
I mean, just to be clear here, this is all just with Google and Chrome and all that stuff. Other browsers have already done the things that Chrome is supposed to have done in terms of limiting access to users by third-party cookies. I mean, Apple did that 4 years ago. Firefox jumped onto the bandwagon and did it. And Google, who is ostensibly the biggest user of them, can't do it.
Yeah, I think biggest user might be a part of that. But sorry, Firefox. Is Firefox still running?
Yeah.
I remember, what version number can Firefox be? I remember writing a piece about Firefox 73 or something, and by the end of the sentence it had updated to 75 and things like this. Just like constant upgrades to Firefox and really trivial stuff, if you could even figure out what it is. So I kind of wandered away from Firefox, but it's still there. It's fighting the fight. It's doing the right thing. Good on Firefox.
Yeah.
Okay. It does occur to me that Firefox is a browser. Look at the quality of information you get here. Cookies, we talked about AI stuff. This is all, at least mostly, software related. Let's briefly go back to hardware, and not to smart rings or Apple Vision Pro, but to the real thing that matters, the iPhone. Because this week, I'm losing track over which iPhone release is being rumoured next, because we're about to get the iPhone 16 in September, but already there are rumours through the iPhone 19. What's the latest you've heard, and which year does it apply to?
Well, I think the bulk of them this week has basically been, or at least the important ones, have been iPhone 17.
Right.
So not the one that's coming up, but the one after that.
So should I just skip the 16, do you think?
Well, it depends on your technology usage and your personal wants and needs as to whether you should or shouldn't upgrade.
Well, I skipped the 14, and I don't regret that. I felt like I appreciated the 15 more, because things like the dynamic island and stuff, that was suddenly all new to me as well. I got it in one big go. So every other one, maybe that's it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, I'm not one to talk. I went from an XR to an 15 Pro Max, so I'm not one to judge.
I did not know that. How do you find the 15 Pro Max?
It's large, it's nice, it works, the camera's amazing, and
is it too large?
No, I have big chunky hands and big chunky pockets, so I'm fine.
Oh, well, I'm just a delicate little waif, obviously. But I did notice, I mentioned that I had this demo of the Apple Vision Pro. At the end of it, the guy in the Apple store showed me something on his phone, and I realised actually afterwards that it had to have been a 15 Pro Max. But right next to me, it didn't seem that much bigger than my 15 Pro. So I'm curious. I don't know. Will I go for a 16 Pro Max? Will I skip to the 17? Yeah. Hang on. Have we covered all the rumours about the 16, the 17? 18 is the least, I think, but then the 19th somewhere. I'm sure Wes and I have talked about the 19th in the past. But I got to admit, right now, I'm getting a bit blurred between all of them. Basically, each one is better than the one before.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. That sums up, well, Apple news in general.
That's true. So, Bet, what you're saying is wait for the iPhone 20.
Yeah, let's go with that. Anyway, the thing with the iPhone 17, just to try and drag this back
Okay.
to
Yeah.
what we were trying to talk about. Yes, I thought I was guilty of this. So the iPhone 17, the big one that I think at least is big for this week is the whole thing of a variable aperture.
Right, I don't know what that means. I'm sorry. Well, I know what an aperture is, but it's not already variable?
Yeah, I'm a photographer, so I have to deal with aperture sizes all the time. A variable aperture is when the little hole that light goes through before it gets to the sensor. You can change the size of that hole, so you can make it big, you can make it smaller, and it depends on how it changes how much light goes through to the sensor. If you make it smaller, then you've got to expose the image for a longer period of time, so there's a possibility of introducing blur. Or if you make it larger, you can expose for a very short space of time instead, so it could be a much sharper image. But also it affects the focal range as well. That is the area of the image that is in focus away from the camera and going out to wherever your subject is and beyond. If you have a variable aperture, it means you can do a couple of things. One big one being you can do bokeh really good, the background blur that you find in portrait.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So if you can control the aperture, you can therefore make it so that everything in the background is blurry and naturally blurry in camera, as opposed to doing it afterwards. And that's the way the iPhone does it at the moment in terms of with portrait images. You can tell it, oh, I want to have the background and the foreground blurrier, or a lot blurrier, or not very blurry at all, and it computationally does it.
This episode is brought to you by Oracle. AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. I mean, it's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, no one does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8 and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/AppleInsider. That's oracle.com/AppleInsider. Oracle, ORACLE.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to Oracle for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. We just had the Emmy nominations last week, and I noticed that one of them is for an iPhone 15 Pro, I think, ad that's all about this thing of altering the focus afterwards. And it's a really nice, I don't know how I missed it when it came out, but have you seen this of a musician, the woman and her band, and the band are arguing over the cover album art? Should she be in focus or should they be in the focus, and all this stuff? And it's very simple but very well done, and taught me what bokeh meant and all of this stuff. You're saying that this is better by doing it in camera right away?
Yes. Doing it in camera means you have it done perfectly. So if you see an image of someone who's done a portrait photo with wispy hair, especially, or if they're wearing glasses, you can see the bits of the glasses that you can see the background in. The bokeh there is not being affected. Or with wispy hair, you can sometimes see gaps in the gaps between the wispy hair and the skull, where you can see the background, and that's not being affected by bokeh. So computational photography does a lot of things, and it does quite well with portraits, but it's not great because it can miss out on these small edge cases. If you're doing it in camera, you know that you're getting bokeh correct and proper thoroughly through the image. You're not going to find any mistakes. But it does mean that you can't then change the amount of bokeh you have afterwards.
Right.
because it's fixed. What Apple's variable aperture thing can do is give you the opportunity to do that, or to fine tune your images so you can have it exactly how you want without having to rely on computational photography. Because at the moment, you have just one aperture and all of the focus range, and then you have to work on it after.
Okay. Apple does this thing of taking multiple shots at the same time, like either side of when you push the button. Is it possible that it will let you take a proper one, but it will also do its own less proper version to give you a choice later?
That's not a bad idea, actually. I mean, when you're doing it with like two cameras at the same time, it's usually going to be one's going to be the actual image, the other one will give enough information for the computational system to work out where everything is in relation to the subject, and then to apply the blur correctly at that point. So it could be that, and you could possibly extend that on top of an actual variable aperture image, and then potentially add more blur in post afterwards. You could possibly do that.
Do you think that this is something where Apple, I think, has this habit of hiding more powerful features away, and I like that. Rather than Microsoft's read the manual before you push the button, Apple's kind of, here it is when you need it. But that's the kind of stuff that's very difficult to stumble across and nobody tells you about. So I think I'm not getting enough use out of my iPhone camera as it is. Is this like an extra layer of power that it'll be very hard to tell users, casual photographers like me, anything about?
I think it's going to be. Apple doesn't really go into when it comes to trying to sell its products. It never really goes into the how a thing is done. It's usually into the what you would need it for, why you would need it, and
I like that.
It's trying to work out how to actually explain to the audience or the potential audience of whatever phone this comes out on, the iPhone 17 or later, what the use is. And that's going to be a bit difficult because some people will say, well, we already have bokeh. Why do we want this special bokeh? So it's going to be difficult.
Bokeh Pro. Yes, that would do it. I think I'm sounding slightly cynical here, and really it's ignorance because I'm not a photographer like you. But also there is a touch of wariness because over the last years, right back to the iPhone 11 Pro, around that area, there have been video bits that have been added that have sounded amazing. Like, was it with the 11 that you could film front and back cameras at the same time? So you could do a multi-camera shoot with one iPhone. And yes, but no. It was always, the quality was too low. It was at best HD when even I shoot YouTube videos in 4K. So instantaneously, a brilliant feature, unusable to me. So now Apple comes out and says something on stage and I think, well, that sounds great. Is it going to be any use to me? You're not telling me. Am I worn down and unfairly cynical, do you think?
Well, I don't think it's safe to be cynical.
Oh.
Generally.
Bit boring though, isn't it?
Oh, well, to be fair, a pessimist is never disappointed.
Okay. Right, not sure it's a lifestyle I want to adopt, but okay.
Oh, come on. It's true. A pessimist is never disappointed. If they are right, they could say they are right. If they are wrong, they are happily surprised that everything's gone right.
Okay. All right. Okay, I tell you what, because we're coming to an end, I want to cover loads of things. Let's go for lifestyle stuff I don't want, such as, I think you know about this, sport. Right, apparently this Apple Sports app has been updated. I can't tell because I don't know a single thing it's telling me, but yay, I suppose that's good. But also, apparently the Olympics, forgive my ignorance here, they've either started or they're about to start. Look how tuned in I am to this. I mean, it's in Paris, love Paris. I'll watch for Paris. But Apple has told us all about amazing coverage they're doing of the Olympics. And I think if you're not a fan, you're at least somewhat better informed than I am. What is Apple doing for us in the Parisian Olympics 2024?
Off the top of my head, there's a bunch of stuff in Apple News where they're doing daily wrap-ups and so on and so forth. I think they're doing a lot of stuff with the Atlantic in there as well. The sports app, come on, it's got results in it.
Oh, okay.
What else are you going to use the sports app for, really?
Absolutely nothing. I can guarantee that. Yeah.
Then there's some. I think there's some podcasts as well, which NBC is doing a lot with, which Apple Podcasts will be featuring as well. There's also the obligatory, if you're in America, all the coverage is done through NBC and Peacock and all that stuff. They got apps, you can go download and use them, that's fine.
So the thing is, it's typical Olympics. If you're into it, you're going to have a fantastic time. And if you're not, there's so much other TV. Well, like me, you might not even notice when it starts. Okay. How about something else I'd noticed, and I'm going to imagine you've noticed as well? We have had the 4th beta of iOS 18. Am I right that you've been having problems with your iPhone beta, or am I just imagining that?
Yes, I had problems with the first and second betas. The icon dark mode thing where it automatically changes the colors of icons to better befit dark mode and all that stuff, and you can tint the colors so they're all the same color if you wanted to. You know that thing?
I've read about it. I didn't really try it, but obviously you did, and it went wrong.
Yeah, and it sucked.
Oh,
it's not just a case of it didn't work properly. I mean, it completely broke icons for me.
ouch.
I had to wait 2 weeks for the next beta to come out so that I can see icons again on the screen. I had to work with everything because after a restart, everything would be fine and working and back and normal. And then about an hour later, I would just get the black and white circular test icon sort of thing for every single one of them.
But what about, didn't they just have names underneath them or something? Could you, I mean, pain, but you could tell.
Yeah, I had to use the names underneath, which is great and horrible because I use multiple pages of icons as well. So I've got to sift through all of these pages of identical looking stuff, looking at the labels, and that was just so annoying. It's all fine now; it's working, but yeah, it was so bad.
Right, I have 2 pages of apps. Control yourself, Malcolm. It's much easier when there's just 2. Yeah, okay. Right. Are you on betas for anything else?
Yeah, I'm on betas for any sort of device that I've got, which is Apple based, except for the Apple Watch because it's a bit too old.
Right. Oh, you've got a couple of iPad Pros, haven't you, or something? So
yes, I have the 9.7 and the M2 11.
It is shockingly handy having 2 iPads. I wouldn't have thought it would be, but if I ever do upgrade to the new one, I'm not going to trade in my 2021 M1 11-inch iPad. It's just too handy having a pair of them. But you put betas on both. You're happy that it's all okay? You don't want a standby machine in any way?
Well, I've only got the beta on the newer machine. The older machine can't take it.
Oh, well, that would make sense then. Okay.
Yeah.
And presumably you're writing on a Mac, are you as well? So is that on Sequoia?
Yeah, well, the top Mac is on Sequoia because it's Apple Silicon. The bottom Mac, which is an older Intel one, nah. But yeah, that's working fine as well.
Okay. Have you found anything particularly new and interesting in any of the betas?
I really do like iPhone mirroring.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah,
yes.
That is a fantastic thing because, especially for my line of work, which is, it does involve taking screenshots of your phone, it means I don't have to pick up the phone, take the screenshot, and then go into Photos and make it sync to the Mac version of Photos and then get it out of that. I don't have to do that because it's just a screenshot on the version on the desktop and it's right there.
Do you know, actually that never occurred to me and I don't know why. Okay. I was waiting to see what would you use it for because I say I like it. People ask me why and I go, I don't know. I have a banking app that's better on the phone and sometimes it's handier to just call that up and things. But I'm surprised, sometimes by accident, sometimes deliberately, I will leave iPhone mirroring up on the screen for ages. Oh, but actually, aren't you on the 4th developer beta and I'm still on the 3rd for it? And in the new one, you can actually resize. You can biggerify your iPhone.
Yes, you can embiggen your iPhone on your Mac. Yes. It's surprisingly useful because I have a 4K screen and it's just a bit too small for my eyesight. So thank goodness you can actually resize it.
We're getting old. That's what it is. Okay, well, on that depressing bombshell, Malcolm, I will put this in the show notes, but where can people find you?
Well, I'm basically Malcolm Owen on social media. So
everywhere.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. All right.
Makes life easier.
Okay, well, I'll pick the best looking one and put that in the show notes. How's that then?
There we go.
Thank you very much for joining me on this. It's good to talk to you, and particularly, it feels like ages since we've done this. Just for speaking about podcasts and thinking about this, please remember, everybody, that there is a HomeKit Insider every Monday. And actually, you don't have to wait till Monday. If you're a premium subscriber, there's Apple Insider Plus in mere moments. But for now, thank you for listening. Thanks to our sponsors, Notion, OnePassword, and Oracle. And we'll talk next week.